I want to start this video with really a heartfelt thank you to all of you who are watching these and taking the time to comment and subscribe and just let me know that in one way or another, this matters to you. As I've said, I think in a couple of my responses to the comments, prison can be such a shameful and isolating thing that to talk about my experiences and to see you watching and to hear your feedback and to hear you to hear you thanking me for just sharing my stories is very touching to me. So I really appreciate that, and I really thank you. And I wanted to also say, I've never said this at the beginning of a video, and I know on YouTube not everybody gets to the end of the video. So if you do like these and you do appreciate them, it's really helpful if you like and subscribe and like other people's comments and make comments of your own. The biggest thing for me is that it gives me that feedback of what I'm doing and what hits home and what doesn't. So I'm grateful to hear from you, grateful to have you like and subscribe, and I'm grateful I'm getting a firsthand experience of how this algorithm works. Obviously, the more people listen, the more people like and subscribe, the more people these videos get put in front of. So thank you all for listening, and here's another one. And this one is actually inspired by a question from one of you who's been watching. This is from somebody who goes by the handle of @69adrummer. And he asked about the whole notion of pen pals and communicating with people in prison, and is it worth it, and what would I suggest, and that kind of thing. And I thought it was a really good question, so I wanted to take a crack at answering it. And I think I'll broaden it out a little bit just to talk about what it means to really connect with and have a relationship and build a relationship with and talk with someone who's doing time in prison. So whether that's as a pen pal or whether that's someone who's going to visit someone or whatever it is, here's some of my thoughts about that. First of all, there's no one way to do it. Every inmate is different, and every inmate is trying to do their time in different ways. Some people are just really kind of in survival mode, and so any kind of kindness, any kind of connection with anyone really matters, even if it's relatively superficial. Just to know, for some guys, just to know that there's someone in the world who is out there and sending them a letter, sending them an email really matters. And then there are people who kind of go deeper and want to use the time in prison to explore deeper parts of themselves or other potentials in life. And, I've known when I was in prison, I had a couple people who were willing to send me books. You can't send books directly because they're afraid what you might put in the book that would make it to the inmate, but you can order books from bookstores and have them sent directly to inmates. And that's a really nice way to help people in tangible ways. And there are also people in prison who just have nothing. And so, if you're in a position to share resources or money, or, for some commissary or for some sweatpants, sweatsuit, that kind of thing, those things can matter as well. But I guess the general thing that I would say, or the most important thing that I would say, is that if you're talking with inmates, convicts, people who've committed crimes, the first thing I would recommend is just to be really, really honest. Because in one way or another, myself included, everyone who has committed a crime got out of touch with the truth, their own truth, or telling the truth to others, or living in a truthful way that has integrity. So to whatever extent you're a pen pal or communicating with someone in prison or someone that you're close to, I think this applies in any relationship, but we're talking about inmates here, so we'll keep it to that. Just be really truthful. There's this idea that in our culture that the only way to be helpful to somebody is to be kind to them. And that's lovely, and it's a really good place to start. But the problem is, especially with inmates, and not just with inmates, but I'll say especially with inmates, there is such a thing as a criminal mind. And a criminal mind may just be nothing but an adaptation to a life of scarcity and a life of trauma and a life of survival. But wherever it comes from, that criminal mind takes on a life of its own. And there are a lot of guys in prison that it just will exploit the hell out of everything. And, the way to, some people, it may be really, really hard or close to impossible to change that. But the best way to cut through that kind of manipulation, exploitation of people is to be really, really truthful. So I would suggest if you have a connection with someone who's in prison, that you start from a place of kindness and caring, because of course that's where any good relationship wants to start from. And that you give yourself permission to be really, really honest. And if you feel like someone is just taking you for granted or just exploiting you or trying to get more and more money out of you, or whatever it is, just developing a one-sided relationship, it's good to let the person know that. It's good. And, maybe if they're seriously in the mode of, what can I get from this? All I care about is what I can get from this. They may bump you off, but then you're not wasting your time on somebody who's just going to suck you dry. And to develop a real, truthful, straightforward, honest connection with someone who's lost their way in the truth can be a really powerful thing. It has been important to me. I was fortunate when I was going through my own forest fire to have some people who just really told me the truth, and really both told me the truth and helped just to be with me while I faced the truth. It's not always that you have to hammer at somebody. I knew what I had done. I knew what I needed to face. But to have people who were willing to hold the space while I faced it myself was really useful. I remember one friend, Jeannie Zandy, when I was trying to decide whether to plead guilty or innocent to this convoluted situation, because I had been manipulated, I had been taken advantage of, and yet I had gone on to manipulate and take advantage of and violate other people. So it was a confusing time to figure out how to translate this experience into legal terms. Am I guilty or am I innocent? Well, I'm kind of both. And I remember I talked with my friend Jeannie Zandy, and she said, in my experience, if you try to avoid taking responsibility for something that you really need to take responsibility for, that thing is just going to hound you and chase you down until you finally do. And I knew this already, but that confirmation and that truth-telling was really helpful. Just that it was important for me to take responsibility for what I had done. And it was good for me to hear that from someone in my life. So tell the truth. Be honest. If you're one of the really powerful prison books, it's kind of a classic, is the book We're All Doing Time by Bo Losoff. And he was never in prison himself, but for some reason, I don't even remember the particulars, but he developed a great affinity for people who are incarcerated. And he wrote a book about it. And his whole principle was, he was a very compassionate person, and he started this whole organization to help inmates do their time. And he was very compassionate and very caring, and he and his staff have written hundreds, probably thousands of letters to inmates, lonely inmates in a really hard place in prison. And so there's a lot of compassion in what he does. And fundamental to his book and to his work with people was that if you don't take responsibility for what you've done, things are not really going to change very substantially in your life. And you're not going to, to whatever extent you're trying to rehabilitate your life or make changes, it's just not going to happen until you really face square up to what you've done, to the harm you've done to people, to the harm you've done to your family, whatever it is. So, having a relationship with someone who's in prison is like having a relationship with anyone else. There can be all different kinds of levels. It can be just the superficial level of somebody you pass in the supermarket and just say a kind word to, or a hello, or whatever, to being someone who can really be present in their lives, who can really listen to them and care about them, and sometimes say, look, I really care about you, and it feels like you're not being truthful here. You're not being truthful with yourself. You're not being truthful with me. And I care about you enough to say that. And if it pisses you off, it pisses you off. But I notice myself distancing when I can tell that you're not telling me the truth, or that you're trying to exploit me instead of share a real connection and a real friendship with me. So it's a personal choice, whether you want to be in contact, in relationship with someone who, most of us, myself included, have a lot of twists and turns in our psyches and inside us, and it can be challenging. But it can also be really rewarding, because the guys I knew in prison, a lot of them were desperately lonely, and a lot of them had nobody having their back, nobody anywhere. So if you're moved to do it, do it, and explore it in whatever way is meaningful for you. And I would encourage you, so many things in life are paradoxical. I would encourage you to be generous about it, to be heartfelt about it, and also to be aware of who you're dealing with, and to be aware that there may be potential manipulations that would happen. And so just to go into it with eyes wide open. So at 69, a drummer, thank you for your question about pen pals. Thank you for listening. And thank you for caring. I mean, the most heartening thing for me about doing this series about prison is how caring the responses are from people. It's funny, if you've been listening to this channel, I did some posts about politics. And man, the politics was vicious as hell. All I managed to do was get both people on the argument, both sides of the argument, kind of being mad at me for what I was saying. And so I'm taking up something easy and non-controversial like prison, and everybody's being really respectful and grateful and responsive. So you never know what's going to come down the pike at you. thank you so much for listening. Thank you at 69 a drummer for your question. If others of you have questions, I'd be glad to hear them. And if I'll take them inside and see if I can respond to them. To me, the most important thing about this has been that this is a conversation. And I'm grateful that you keep coming back to hear more. I'm grateful that you look at the what do you call it? The thumbnails that come up on YouTube. And it seems like YouTube always manages to pick the frame of me where it looks like I've swallowed a suppository. But still you keep coming back and still you keep listening. So thank you for that. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.